My name is Mike Cashman. Can a Christian support the UK Tory Party in 2021? In this video, I'll explain why I believe the answer to that is no, but I invite your reactions in the comments if you disagree. I am saying Christian. I expect the same arguments would apply to followers of other faiths such as Muslim, Buddhist, Sikh, for example, and also to humanists who believe in a general ethical code. But I speak from my own position. I have, over the course of my life, spent, shall we say, more than 15 years in the Anglican Church, the Roman Catholic Church, an independent stroke Baptist church, including some positions of church leadership. I don't have such positions at the moment. So I am speaking to some extent from what I know. Now, the question is important. I'm not saying, is it valid for a Christian ever to have joined the Tory party? Look, there are different approaches to the way that public administration and other matters should be handled in this country. Conservative, Labour, Liberal Democrat, Green Party and others have typically, and the nationalist parties or the national parties, have typically had different views on these matters, and that is fair enough. Brexit, for example, is not inherently a moral question. There may be some moral arguments to be made, but it's valid to believe that Britain would be better off outside the European Union or better off inside. I did write 2 blog articles making the case for each at the time, but I'm looking at the questions of 2021. Now, the Conservative Party has changed over the course of the last few years. That's very evident in, as we can see, when moderate members were expelled. But things have been happening in recent years that didn't happen before. Now, there's lots of examples I could take. I'm going to pick a few where I'm sticking to instances where there's a objective report or a legal case made for frankly, the sins of members of the Tory party acting on behalf of their party. So I'm sticking therefore to instances in which there's a pretty good case made. So what has been deemed to be acceptable in that the relevant person hasn't had to resign or be dismissed has been admitted bias in planning, providing favours by Robert Jenrick to a friend in terms of planning permission, where the bias, or at least the appearance of bias, was acknowledged. What's been allowed has been bullying, breaking the ministerial code by Priti Patel, which senior civil servant resigned, but the person doing the bullying didn't resign and was allowed by the Prime Minister not to resign. I'm appalled at the total extent of crony contracting. Now, the National Audit Office, in their independent report, has highlighted concerns here. The full details are available from the Good Law Project website. But just yesterday, the judge remarked that somebody being the ex-school friend of one's father-in-law is not a valid reason for awarding a PPE contract. It shouldn't have entered into it. Certainly shouldn't. I have had sign-off for low numbers of millions of pounds of UK public money in my time. I won't say total control because I've never operated in a system so lax where I could just favour my friends. I am appalled at the hundreds of millions that has been firstly wasted and secondly devoted to incompetent suppliers of PPE. Well, sorry, people who were not competent to supply PPE, who had no experience in it because they were cronies, putting them ahead of qualified suppliers. And in that case, it's not just the money that's lost, it's the lack of the effective PPE that the staff needed it where the staff needed that PPE and for lack of it have caught COVID and some have not recovered. So we have some absolutely dreadful behaviours there which have been approved and accepted without resignation. And the typical Conservative argument that we're now hearing is not that these things were morally, ethically correct, but rather people are not interested in this sort of thing. Frankly, when I hear politicians telling me what I'm not interested in, I feel quite patronised. But I would also say, whenever you hear that phrase, people are not interested in, it seems to mean, yes, guilty, we have done wrong, but we'd rather not talk about it. It came out during the general election campaign where during a sample period, Conservative adverts were found to be 88% misleading. Labour adverts in the same time period were 0% misleading. Not to say they never were, this was just a sample. The Conservatives came up with a fake Twitter account, and their excuse for it was, oh, people are not interested in this sort of Westminster buzz. If you are morally deceitful, if you do not believe in truth, then you cannot govern. And the response to this cannot be, as it used to be then, but Jeremy Corbyn, but Keir Starmer. Whoever the Labour leader is, they will be assassinated by the right-wing press. Character assassination, that is to say. I think the chief argument against Jeremy Corbyn in 2019 was that if he became Prime Minister, then in 2020 he would spend an awful lot of public money. Well, as it turns out, given the circumstances, that's what the Conservatives have done. Does it matter? Yes, it does. OK, there isn't a general election coming up. I mean, if you live in Chesham or Amersham or Batley and Spen, then please do not vote Tory. You can vote against Tory at a by-election anyway to register your protest. But it does matter. The approval that the Conservatives are getting at the moment is quite worrying, because that tends to indicate approval of their trampling over all the moral principles of government, all the principles of telling the truth. Peter Stavanovich has done a video, do watch it if you haven't seen it. 17 million people have watched it, in which he recounts Boris Johnson's lies. This is immoral, deceitful behaviour. Look, if you don't want to support the Labour Party, there are plenty of others. I'm not saying they should be necessarily a first choice, though. They may be the best hope to unseat the Tory government at the next election. But yeah, vote Green, vote Lib Dem, vote for whoever is likely to overturn the Tory candidate. There may be decent people in the Tory party who joined it with good intentions, but they are not in control. And so it does matter that we should not give our support to immoral and deceitful politicians, never mind what the alternatives are. We should, in opinion polls, be registering that we cannot support deceitful politicians. And, if they have promised you things, what is the point of those promises if they are deceitful people? So that's my case. That's why I would find it impossible as a Christian to support this Tory party in the UK in 2021. And I'm making this video because if you are a Christian, or if you believe in general principles of moral and ethical behaviour, then I hope you would take a similar view. Because I was out on the streets, as it were, before lockdown, this is back in 2019, talking to hundreds of young people. And one of the things that really worried me was, so I was talking to hundreds of people, but some young people particularly said to me, oh yes, but don't all politicians lie? And that's where I needed to say, not to this extent. Yes, there may be exaggerations, there may be promises that are not necessarily fulfilled. Look, the first general election that I wrote about was 1964. Okay, I was at school at the time. From that time to this, I have never seen a government as deceitful, as immoral as Boris Johnson's Conservative government of 2019 to now. And things can be changed. I know there are some people who say to me, well, all the Tories are just as bad as each other. No, they're not. There are some very competent people, people of integrity, chairs of select committees, for example. If the support for Boris Johnson falls away in public opinion polls, the Tory MPs will elect a new leader. Now, I might prefer that a different party was in government, but there are Tories who I would prefer to see as leader than Boris Johnson. Now, normally, as I say, question of religion and politics, people tend to think that they're entirely separate. But where you've got a blatantly immoral leader, then I believe Christians have a duty to oppose that leader. Some people say to me, but what about the scripture verse which says that you must respect the authorities? Look, I'm not talking about breaking the law, but there's nothing in the gospel, nothing in the Bible, which says that you have to support all the policies of the current government. And in this case, I think we've got a moral duty not to. Nick Baines in the House of Lords said the gap between our rhetoric, such as upholding international law, and the UK's actual behaviour is becoming very apparent. So the UK Tory government may feel that it can hoodwink the electorate, but it can't deceive the international community. So the UK reputation is being damaged, and to do something about that, we need to make sure that we're not supporting the government that's damaging it. As I say, if you have a different view, please put your thoughts in the comments. Thank you.